Good morning, everyone. I'm Kevin Allen, and I'm joined by my usual broadcast partner, former NHL defenseman Tom Laidlaw, who played 11 seasons for the New York Rangers and Los Angeles Kings. This is the Laidlaw and Allen Report. Come to you twice a week to talk all things hockey. We got a very special guest today. Of course, you're going to recognize him right away. It's Craig Patrick, who, some of you know him that he was Herb Brooks' right-hand man at the 1980 Olympic Games. Penguins fans, of course, remember that he was the architect of the championship teams there in the early 90s, and he's still active. We're going to talk about what he's doing now. He's also scouting for the Penguins. He's got a lot going on. Welcome, Craig, to the show.
Thank you, Kevin. It's great to be here. It's good to see my buddy Tom again.
Yeah, we were just telling a few old stories, some that we can't repeat on air, but we had a great. We were just talking to. So Craig came to the team in 1980-81. Freddie Shero got fired and all his people, and Craig took over. And that's when we went on our long run in the playoffs when they ranked the teams 1 through 16. We ended up going to the semifinals against the Islanders. But Craig was one of those guys that was all about team and everything too. So great to see you again, bud. Great to see you.
Great seeing you.
All right. So first of all, we'll start where you're at today. You were talking about a little bit. You're involved in a new league. It's a 3-on-3 league. Can you tell us the name of that and a little bit about it?
It's called 3 Ice, which the number 3 and then ICE, and it'll be running in the summer. We wanted to start last summer, but COVID knocked us out of the box. But we're going to start our first weekend will be June 18th. It's just on Saturdays. We tour around the country. It's a 6-team league, and we play tournament style each weekend and crown a winner, and they earn points, and then we have a final weekend in Las Vegas for the playoffs. And the players earn money based on their winnings. They have to win games to earn money, and just like the PGA Tour type of style. And we have 8 regular weekends, and then the last weekend, as I mentioned, will be in Vegas for the championships. And we have the prize money is for the 8 weeks is $2 million, little more than $2 million purse, and then the final weekend is a little more than $1 million purse. And the final weekend's another $1 million. And it's going to be, there's no hitting, no fighting. It's all skill, speed, execution at high speed. It's all about scoring goals. And we're excited about getting started.
So I wouldn't qualify for the league then. It's all about skill. Is that what you're saying?
Well, someone's got to stop them. You would have been.
Craig, I was fearful when the NHL went to 3-on-3 overtime, is that the coaches would take over eventually and slow it down, play more defensive style. But I was at a game live last night and went into overtime, and it was just as exciting as it's been since the beginning. I think there's a little coaching in it, but don't you think for the most part it's been able to maintain that high level of energy?
Oh, definitely. I think initially coaches did try to get puck possession and not force the plays, but in our format, it's all about scoring goals because in our first round, there'll be 3 games, and the 3 winners advance, and the team that scores the most goals advance to the second round, and then they advance to the finals. But so it's and any penalties will be penalty shots. Nobody's going to sit in the penalty box. So
nice.
So I think it's an exciting format that we're putting together.
And you've got 6 teams. You've got 6 pretty interesting names coaching, too. Can you mention who's coaching the teams?
Sure, yeah. We've got Brian Trottier, Grant Fuhrer, Joey Mullen, Larry Murphy, Guy Carbonneau, and John LeClaire.
Wow, that's good. I like that.
Craig, rosters, are they former NHL players? Where are they guys coming up, guys that didn't make it? Give us a rundown.
It's going to be a mixture of all of those. We're going to have some young guns that are still trying to make their way, but it's going to be the speedy, skilled guys. And we'll have retired NHL guys. We've got 100 contracts signed already.
Wow.
But we're only going to have like 55. We're going to have 6 teams, which are 6 skaters and a goalie. And then we're going to have extra goalies because of injuries, and you need a couple on the bench for each game. And we'll have extra forwards in defense on a taxi squad that will travel with us, because we're going to need more than just the 42 players or 48 players. So we'll have around 55 players. And the contracts don't go live until they actually step on the ice for us. So we're going to have a tryout in Las Vegas in mid-April. But because of COVID, a lot of these leagues have extended their seasons and their playoffs. So a lot of guys won't be available for that tryout. So we'll have a draft after the tryout, but we're not going to draft the full group of players. We'll draft some others off of paper that can't make the tryout. So,
as far as the fans are concerned, they'll buy one ticket, come into the building, and have about 3 hours of action where it's like a playoff format. So you're watching a whole bunch of games.
Yes.
Wow, that's cool.
Do you guys have a television deal yet, Craig?
Yes, we have a television deal with CBS and CBS Sports in the U.S.
Wow.
We have TSN and RDS in Canada, and ESPN International is going to carry it in 184 countries. So
very cool. Wow, that's interesting. Huh?
Yeah.
What has been the NHL reaction, Craig, to your league?
Well, we're additive to hockey. We're not taking any of their players or any of that. We're in the summer. We're not going to compete with them in any way at all. So,
good job. Yeah. That's very interesting, right? I mean, there's no conflict at all with the NHL. If anything, would want to help promote it down the road, right? I mean, hopefully.
Yeah. Well, we haven't had any complaints so far. So,
good.
And what kind of buildings are you playing in?
Well, we've got right now we're scheduled in Pittsburgh, Nashville, Vegas, 2 stops, Quebec City, London, Ontario, Hershey, and Grand Rapids are the cities we have right now.
So is Steve Baker involved here too? One of our fans,
yes.
Barry Schilling.
Yeah, Steve Baker's it's Eddie Johnson's son. Eddie Johnson was a GM, coach, player. His son EJ went to a training camp, a rookie camp in New Jersey and rookie camp in Pittsburgh, and noticed that they did these 3-on-3 tournaments. And he noticed all the excitement in the crowd, and everybody was sitting on the edge of the seat watching. He said, and his background is marketing and TV. He said, we can do this for TV. It should be great. And he's done a great job. He came up with the idea 4 years ago, and he's been working on it for 4 years. They brought me in about a year and a half ago.
Right.
And he's done a great job getting this all set up.
Have you finalized what the average ticket would be to get in to see?
They're going on sale this Friday. So
wow.
I don't know the price range. I don't get into that stuff. I sit in the meetings, but it's like French to me. I don't understand it.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Cool.
Craig, while we have you on, I wanted to ask you a little bit. We have the NHL trade deadline come up, and you're the perfect guy to ask us. I think back when I first started covering the league to what the trade deadline is, and now it's like Christmas morning, and it's like a political convention, gavel to gavel coverage. It's on television. It's amazing to me what it looks like now in comparison. And I remember talking to you about, trade deadline, and it was a pretty solitary experience for GMs back then. And now there's war rooms, and it's pretty exciting. Can you talk a little bit about, how it's sort of evolved since you were a GM doing it and the way it is now?
Well, yeah, it's when I stepped behind the bench in New York in 1980, I was the GM and coach.
Yeah.
And had no experience and nobody to work with. Actually, we used injured players as our assistant coaches on the bench. Went up in the box talking to another assistant, another
That's
player
right.
on the bench.
Was that Walt Tkachuk, right? Was that Walt that was?
Eventually, Walt got hurt and he became an assistant coach,
right.
But he was playing at that time.
Right.
The assistant I had was Lars Erik Sjoberg.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Lars,
yeah. Remember the name.
Lars had an import-export business in New York. And he couldn't travel, so he didn't go on the road with us. So that's when we definitely used all the injured players to be on the bench. And actually, we had Eddie Hospiter once on the bench as an assistant. And he's talking. He's got the headphones on and talking to upstairs, and they're getting from I think it was John Davidson because he was hurt.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
So then something happened on the ice, and Eddie went berserk. He's in the street clothes and he's grabbing guys from the bench, trying to hit them. So the league made a rule we couldn't use assistant coaches.
Oh, I didn't know that. Wow, that's interesting. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I want to ask you too.
To the GM part of it, the staff was small back then. There was no, I finally got an assistant general manager in Pittsburgh when I hired Eddie Johnson to help me out, because he had been coaching us, and we transitioned to a new coach, and I just kept him on as an assistant general manager. And that would have been the mid '90s, so that's the first time I had an assistant GM. So yeah, when you made decisions back then, it was by committee, but we didn't have big staffs and we didn't have the analytics to deal with, or to use. I shouldn't say deal with.
Yeah.
That wouldn't go over well in today's world.
Yeah. Well, it's so interesting. I just think about even the information flow. Back then, now everything's at your fingertip. All the information about the players, you can go all the way back to the kid was, playing Bantam. You get his statistics, and back then all you had was the NHL guide and record book that looked up players. It's completely different. I want to ask you too, Craig. I thought about this when Tom said you were going to come on. I think back to the team that you developed there, and obviously you had, Mario Lemieux and Yager. So the way to go obviously was offense. But, the way they played, that culture has continued all these years. Like every year we expect the Penguins to score goals, and they've kind of developed this team that they've built on, and it's almost like it's been passed down from generation to generation. Even today's team, the expectation is they're going to score. You can't just score and win, but they are going to score. That with the Penguins. Yeah.
Well, Pittsburgh's been very fortunate since 1984. They've had one or two stars, elite stars, every year since then. And we built around Mario when I first got here. Yager was a draft pick that year. He was our first draft pick. And then I got let go in 2006, but before that we drafted Fleury, Crosby, Malkin, Letang, and they've won 3 cups. So they've had amazing run here since 1984 with star players.
Well, I know Kevin's going to want to bounce on and talk about more of what Craig's done in his career, but I do want to touch on, I can't help it. We got to touch on poor Craig and the stuff that he had to deal with in the early 80s with the bunch of mudheads that we had. We had a great team. They were talking before about the run we had Craig's first year, my first year in the league, when we didn't have a great regular season, but had a run in the playoffs where we beat the LA Kings with a big brawl there in that series, beat St. Louis, and then ultimately lost to the Islanders. And, they were winning all their cups. But there's some funny things that happened to poor Craig along the way. And I think I mentioned before that we had one time during a game against Philadelphia where Eddie Hospodar got traded over the Flyers. And we decided during the warm-up we were going to shoot pucks at Eddie's feet, just to joke around with him. And Mike Keenan, the coach of the Flyers, saw this and wouldn't dress Eddie, pulled him out of the lineup because he was mad at poor Eddie. And Eddie wasn't doing anything. It was us shooting pucks at him. But on that same note, we had practice one day, and Craig was coaching, and I decided that I was going to shoot pucks at Craig's feet from the other end of the rink. And Craig was just going around the corner, perfect shot, knocked his feet out from underneath him, and he goes down and hits his head on the ice and now has a huge black eye and has to go to a big meeting. He wasn't mad at me as much about the black eye. He was more mad at me about the fact that he had to go to this big meeting. Craig doesn't remember the whole story. I can remember it because I felt so bad. Thinking it was so funny, shooting the puck at Craig, and he goes down. So,
what I remember, I don't remember the injuries, but I do remember I'm skating, and all of a sudden my leg just disappeared on me. I thought I got shot in the leg. So it just disappeared on me.
Oh God, we had some fun times. We had a great, that team that we went to the semifinals with was a close team too, and I think that's part of the reason we had so much success. Right, we all fought for each other, and everything. It was good. A lot of fun.
Having you here, Craig, at least now we can get the truth on one of Tom's favorite stories. Tom often talks about, Herb running a drill in practice, and Tom ends up with the puck, and he blows his whistles. He goes, "Everybody stop." He goes, "Does everyone see what happened here? Tom Laidlaw's got the puck, so a mistake has happened here." How bad was he with the puck that Herb felt like that?
Herb like to pick somebody and pick on them.
Yeah.
And Tommy happened to be the guy.
Yeah.
Just happened to be the guy, unfortunately.
There's the other time we talked about before the show too, where so my second year league was Herb's first year coming in, and I'd had the good rookie year, so I feared now naively that I was this veteran player, and the veterans back then didn't work out during the summer; they just sat around and drank beer. So I come into training camp. Herb Brooks' first training camp. We do all our physicals over here, then we fly over to Finland, get on the ice right away, and have practice. Well, the practice ends, and Herb keeps one player on the ice, and that's me for about another 20-minute skate. And apparently I had put on about 20 pounds of not muscle. And I had given Herb exactly what he needed. Like Craig said, he was going to use me to show everybody else that this is where we're going to do things. And so we go into the cabins where we're staying, and multiple bedrooms in the cabins. And Craig and Herb are staying together. And Herb brings me in. He just rips into me. And Craig's in the other room. And Herb's saying, "Hey, you fat. And you have to heard so many good things about you and all that." And as I'm leaving the cabin, Craig's in the other room, and I look in, and he's dying laughing. He thinks it's just hysterical that Herb's yelling at me. So I wanted to thank you for that too, Craig, for all your support.
Yeah. We can't let you out of here, Craig, without talking a little bit just about 1980. I can't imagine you've grown weary of talking about it, considering it's one of maybe the greatest sporting triumph in the history of sports. But we've lost Mark Pavlich on that team. We've lost Herb. When you think back about that, and I'm sure you've had to reflect upon it so many times, is there anything about that stands out that you think has sort of been, underreported, or somebody maybe that was more valuable than people realized at the time? Because we all know who the players who get the top billing for scoring the big goals and so forth.
Yeah, well, I can think of a lot of things, but I mean, first off, Herb was brilliant that year. He had it all. I'll tell you how I got on board. It was my last year playing, 79, and the U.S. team asked me to play for the U.S. in Moscow in the World Championships, and Herb was the coach. We get over there, and I had played with him in the early 70s on U.S. teams, so I knew him pretty well. And he said he'd like me to be the captain, and I think he made me a captain because he didn't use me at all, and he knew I wouldn't get mad. So anyway, he had all these young kids he was really testing for the Olympic team. And halfway through the term, he said, I'm going to be the coach for the Olympic team.
For the safe bites. You can come to a stop.
I said, yeah, I'm aware of that. And he said, would you be interested in being the assistant? I've offered the job to somebody else, but I don't think they're going to take it. And I said, sure, I'll be interested. So we get back stateside, and he called me in the middle of May, and he said, yeah, I was right. The guy turned it down. Are you still interested? I said, sure. I said, when do you need me? He said, tomorrow. And I was in Washington, D.C., and he was in St. Paul, Minnesota. So I got in my car, and I got out there the next day. And we sat down, and he said, the tryouts weren't until July. And this is middle of May. He said, the guys we're going to have on this team, so he's got them picked, don't like each other. He said, the only way I know how to make them a team is for them to universally be against me, Herbie. And he said, Craig, your job is just to keep the pieces together. That's all you got to do, just keep the pieces together. That's your job. And it worked out really well because I knew most of the players already. And the general manager worked full-time at the Mayo Clinic and didn't have time to do the general manager stuff. So he asked me to do the day-to-day GM stuff. And the players had to come to me for everything. So it was that was the easiest job in the world I ever had, to just keep the pieces together. Yeah, I can do that. Yeah. So, but he worked them. He knew exactly what he wanted as a player, and he knew what his program was going to be, and he needed players that were going to be able to accept what he was going to put them through for 7 months. And when we went to the sports festival, I was amazed at the talent level that the U.S. had at that time, because I'd been away from amateur hockey for 10 years. And we didn't pick all the best players. We picked some really good ones and some others that were really character guys. could put up with what Herb was going to put them through.
Yeah.
And he had a plan from day one on how to train them on and off the ice. Everything was 45-second intervals, as hard as you can go for 45 seconds, rest for a minute and a half, then go hard again for 45 seconds, both on and off the ice. Everything they did. And they had a guy named Jack Blatherwick. He came to New York with us, right, Tom?
Yep.
Yeah, he was his guru for training.
Right.
And everything.
We love Jack too, by the way, because Jack wouldn't just want us to go all out at a time. It was very specific training. We said, okay, because if Herb got mad, we were afraid he was going to skate us for an hour, right? So we love Jack. He was good. Yeah. So Craig, going into the tournament and the Olympics, both the famous game where you beat the Russians and the tournament in general, did you guys think you could win it? Did you think that they could really win it and get a gold medal?
Well, Herbie asked me before the tournament. He just said, "Do you think we can get a medal?" And I said, "Absolutely, we can get a medal." Because we gained so much faith in each other over 7 months that I knew these guys could play. We played in the back then it was called the Central Hockey League, which was all teams that were farm teams of NHL teams, and so we're playing their top prospects, and the points counted for the league. Like Herb set it up so that our games counted in the league standings. Didn't do anything for us except give us good competition, and we won 16 out of 18 games. So we gained confidence all the way along. And then we got into the Olympics. I mean, the Russians, we'd never seen the Russian team before, except for Madison Square Garden 2 weeks before we went to the Olympics, and they kicked our butt. But in that game, our guys we played the Russian teams, but not the Red Army team. And we just, for the first period and a half, we stood and watched. Everybody they were like, these guys are pretty good. And then the score was 7-0 halfway through the game. Then we started to play, started to skate with them, and it was 3-3 the rest of the way. So it gave us a bit of confidence. And then we go into the Olympics, and in the Olympics, we were the best conditioned athletic team, any sport, anywhere on the globe that year, the way Herb had them trained. And we all knew that. We all knew that they were in such great. If you ask Kenny Morrow days, I've never been in that good shape ever again.
Right.
But we scored all our goals in the second half of the games because we wore everybody down. And then when we beat the Czechs, I think it was 5-3 or even a bigger score.
7-2 or something like that, wasn't it?
Yeah, maybe 7-2, 7. Like, no, you don't beat the Czechs. They're just as good as the Russians.
Yeah.
So once we did that, it was like, oh, jeez, we're good. We started to realize how good we were.
No.
Craig, it's time for my public service announcement now. I've been to that arena, as I'm sure you have, many times after that for various USA Hockey events. And I know a lot of younger American players have played there since then. And it's always bothered me that they haven't marked on the ice where Eruzione was when he scored that goal. Like, that should be there. I mean, that's a historic arena. That was an historic event. And like, if, considering all the young players who could be inspired skating on that ice and seeing exactly where, and it would be easy in today's GPS world to know exactly where he was. Yeah. And, you could put a big logo in there and, and I've tried everything. I've asked about it at the Lake Placid Arena, USA Hockey. I lobbied Dave Ogren when he was the thing trying to, but to no avail. They just don't see the value in that. I think it would be tremendous value to have that designated.
That's a good point. We're going up there again in May, so I'll bring it up to people.
Yeah. I mean, I just don't know why they haven't done that.
We've actually been up there with kids tournaments, and it is something going in there with the kids the first time.
Sure.
And if there's not a game going on, the score they have up on the scoreboard is 4-3.
Oh.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. That's right.
But there's a movement going on right now. We've raised some money already. It's a monument to monument to the miracle. It's going to be a bronze thing. It's already been designed, and we're raising money to have it so it built, and it's when the guys all got up on the podium when they won the gold medal, and
Yeah.
Mike was up there, and he goes, "Come on up," and they all went running up. It's
Yeah.
going to be that scene in
Oh,
bronze, and
nice.
it's going to be outside the rink in Lake Placid. So,
That'd be great. Wow, very nice.
Yeah, well, that's a historic landmark, for sure in the sporting world. Well, Craig, we've enjoyed having you. We appreciate you joining us, and I'm kind of excited about that league. I love 3-on-3 hockey, so it'll be interesting to watch that develop.
well, great. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it. Good to
Good to
you.
see you again, Craig.
Yeah.
Yep.
We're
Thank
the
you.
all-time best man I've ever met in hockey. Well, anytime, Mike. So good to see you again.
Great seeing you, Tom.
Yeah. That was Craig Patrick, who, of course, was, as I mentioned, Herb Brooks' right-hand man. Also was with the Rangers when Tommy was a star with the Rangers, and was having fun with Herb Brooks. And, it was interesting. And I'd like to get you to elaborate on that, because I know that to be true, that Herb liked to, pick one player. What Craig didn't say, but what I know to be the truth is he was careful who he picked. He wanted someone who could actually take it and not, be wrecked by it. And, by your personality, you took it as a challenge, I'm sure. When
Yeah, and I challenged. It was funny because I felt comfortable in challenging him too. Like he would do things. Like one time he shot a puck at my head. We were doing I must have been goofing around or something like that, and we were doing a breakout drill where Herb would dump the puck into defensive zone. We'd break out, and I would say something to him. I don't know what it was, and he turned around and shot the puck at my forehead, and I had to put my hand up to stop it. And at first I was a little bit shocked, and I thought, I can't let him think that he's got the best of me here. So I put the puck in my mouth like I was chewing on it, and then threw it down. But Herb was definitely like that. I found out later from a lot of people that were friends with Herb that I was one of his boys, I guess one of his favorites. But yeah, you sure wouldn't have known it when we were playing. Although I say that, but like it's the way he played me too that really showed how he felt about it. We had a situation where up a goal late in the game, and I told the story before. He would never come down and ask me if I was all right. Maybe I played a lot, I was tired, bloodied, or whatever, and he would literally just come down and kick me in the ass, and he said, "Get the F out there." And it made me feel, I don't know, I think I felt good, because if Herb felt that I was the guy he wanted out there, no matter how hurt I was or tired I was, I guess it gave me that boost of confidence. And I think he knew that, and just, give me the boot and get on the ice. But he was, and like Craig said too, like the thing with Herb, he was really good in realizing that you don't win like a Stanley Cup or a gold medal with just the best players all the time. It has to be obviously good enough players, but also the people that fill certain roles within the team. And he was great. And Craig was so good at that too. And I not as much with Rangers, but I saw Craig in action in Pittsburgh, and I was really impressed with Craig because he was willing to bring in really strong personalities. Scotty Bowman, Bob Johnson, which a lot of general managers would not want to bring those people in because, again, the danger is that they're going to take over the team. But Craig was strong enough to realize that no, he was confident in himself, knew what he was doing with his job, and brought in those strong people, and obviously helped them win their cups too. So.
Well, he had every reason to be confident in his ability. I mean, he was terrific. You look at that team that he built and the trades that he engineered, bringing Ronnie Francis in, Ulf Samuelsson. He brought in Trache. It wasn't easy to make those kind of trades back then, but he always managed to be able to do it. And today, when I think of a great trader, I think of Jim Rutherford. But back then, Craig Patrick was the guy that we saw as a guy that, knew how to, make trades. And he wasn't fearful of giving up players. He gave up some talented players to get those. But, he knew what constituted a winning roster, and he had a real good understanding of the culture and psychology of the game. He worked with Herb Brooks. Today, that's a big part of every team.
Yeah.
But back then, it was kind of the idea of thinking about, players getting along and, that kind of thing. It wasn't as widespread. It was just like,
I agree totally. Yeah, it's kind of like you pulled your roster together, and if everybody got along, fine. If they didn't get along, then that's the way it went. Yeah.
Yeah. And Herb would think about those things. He was very careful in building his Olympic roster of, or at least he paid attention to the geographic representation. And teams can be a little cliquey, and he wanted to make sure that he had some BU guys that could hang together, and some Minnesota guys. And
I thought it was interesting what Craig said about that. I knew they talked about it in the movie, but how aware Herb was about that early on. That okay, here's the guys I'm picking, and we know we've got a problem right off the bat because the Minnesota guys don't like the Boston guys, right? Now we have to figure out how to make that work. So,
I mean, I never have seen this talked about by any of the players, but there was a thought too that one of Bob Suter's roles was to be there for Mark Johnson because they were both from Wisconsin.
Right.
It was, but I think the big reason Herbie liked Suter is, his nickname, the Suter, was Bam Bam. When things got a little rough, Bam Bam would go out on the ice.
I didn't know that about him. Was it? Oh, okay.
Yeah. He was a tough little player. He really was. So, years ago, Ryan Suter had never seen his dad play in the Olympic Games, and I had collected CDs of all those games, and so I copied them all and gave them to Ryan so he could actually watch his dad. He was so thankful for that. He had never seen it. He'd seen the gold medal game,
right?
But I don't think Bob played a lot in that game.
I don't think he did either.
Yeah, but I had the games where he did play. I remember he played. I think. Well, I can't remember what game it was, but he did play one. One game was pretty rough, and he got a lot of time in that game. So, Hey,
I want to get away from hockey a little bit. I've got a bone to pick, and it's interesting. I guess I'm media now, but I'm looking at it more from a former player standpoint. We've got the CBA negotiations going on with Major League Baseball. Have you been following that pretty good?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So they had a negotiation, 2 days ago. A long negotiation went early in the morning, and they said they're making progress. They sent out all these messages. Everybody's tweeting, progress is coming. They may get a deal done. If they don't get a deal done by 5:00 tomorrow, then they'll start canceling games. I'm sitting there saying to myself, I mean, you've been through these negotiations too with the NHL. I'm saying to myself, they're not getting a deal done. The deal doesn't get done until there are games missed and paychecks missed. So, but it was interesting how so much of the media was buying into the leaks that were being spread. And then obviously yesterday went by at 5:00 and no deal.
Yeah. I think the media really doesn't know how to cover a CBA. And I say that with all due respect to the fact there's a lot of terrific reporters. But and I've learned this from both Donald Fear and Gary Bettman about this, that, reporters tend to want to cover it like they're covering a sporting event where there's teams winning and losing. And that's not how negotiations go. I have a friend who was in negotiation, not in sports, and she would always tell me that you almost never know when you're going to make a breakthrough, and you all of a sudden it just kind of comes together, and then there's momentum, and next thing you know, you got a deal. But she said, like half the time people would ask me, well, how's it going? Are you winning or losing? And she goes, I got no idea.
Yeah,
because you just don't know what they're thinking. Because at some point, some side will say, we're just not, this is a loss for us if we don't get our people on the field, or owners will say, we're not going to gain enough to, and then, there'll be some movement and this will get done. So,
see, and I think these CBA negotiations now with these pro sports leagues are so refined that both sides, I believe, already have a pretty good idea where it's going to ultimately end up, or at least a range where it's going to go. So it's just a matter of inflicting some pain on the other side to get the best deal possible. I just think they know that, okay, at some certain date, this is the deal that's going to be there. We just have to go through this process and get it done. Right?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to irritate both a union man and a league person, you could, tell them, if you guys shifted roles, you'd end up in exactly the same spot.
Yeah.
Because these guys are professionals. Geez, I'm just a popular guy today.
Who we got calling? Who's calling?
It's Robert Duff, Bob Duff.
Oh, Bobby Duff. Bob Duff.
Yeah, good man, Bob. But anyway, you never know gosh, I lost my train of thought.
What you were talking about before, if they switch sides, the lawyers switch
Yeah,
sides.
yeah. I mean, these guys are professionals.
Yeah.
You know, they're negotiators. They know what they're doing. They've been through it, and I mean, they believe obviously in the principles of that they're fighting for. You know, Donald Fehr is definitely a union man, but I would argue that if you put him where Gary Bettman was, and put Gary Bettman, who you know is a very skilled negotiator as well, you still would come up with the same sort of deal. These guys just know what they're doing. They represent their people and they do it well.
And I think the biggest job that they have is rallying the troops behind them, right? Is getting on the player
Right.
side, get the players all buy in, come out, you know, after the negotiations have stalled. We want the players to come out and talk about the owners being these big, bad, nasty people. You know, when the negotiations have stalled, we want the other owners to come out and say that, oh, the players are being greedy, you know, and blame everybody else. It's a pattern. That's the thing that kind of amazes me, that if you look back as a media member, look back at any of the past negotiations for any of the leagues, it's pretty much the same pattern now. Really. So,
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah, and it's going to get done at some point, whenever, as you said, when there's enough pressure. You need a deadline. Like, you know, people don't understand. They say, well, why can't, you know, they had 2 months to work on this. Well, that's not the way it works.
Yeah.
You know, you need a pressure point,
Yeah.
you know, in order to get it going. And, you know, we all see it in our own everyday lives, but we don't recognize it as being the same. For example, if you're selling your car, and you put it up for $2,000, and the guy comes to look at it, and you'll say, you know, I think there's a problem. I'll give you $1,400.
right.
And then, you know, you say, well, I'm not going less than $1,800. And you'll say, well, I'll do 17. Well, you know how that goes. Well, it's no different. It's just larger and more items.
Absolutely.
You know? Yeah, you know,
Totally.
that's how it goes. So
Sad news last night. Our girls' high school hockey team season is over. We had played in the conference championship, playoff game, lost to the best team in the league, 2-0. So girls played well. We played in a state championship game last night. We had a team that we were ranked higher than, and we got down 7-2 going into the third period. And the other coach and I are both like, oh man, this is going to be tough to come back from this one. But to their credit, the girls went out and made it 7-6. Like within 5 minutes, like scored like, you know, the 4 quick goals, made it 7-6. We couldn't score another goal. We finally pulled our goalie about a minute to go, and the other team scored in the empty net. So we lost 8-6. Our season's over. So
now, what was that? That was at the conference.
that was a state championship, first game of the state championship.
So
So we had
the
the
playoff.
conference was first, yeah, and then the state championships after that. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So, but it wasn't the state championship game. You were just
No, I correct you. Right, it was not the championship game. It was the first game in the state playoffs. Yeah.
in the playoffs. Okay. All right. Well,
The girls played hard though, man. When they came out, and it was in our home building, and it wasn't a huge crowd, but because we were down 7-2, and then we came back like within 5 minutes and made it 7-6, the crowd was going nuts. It was pretty. It was a fun game to be a part of. It was good. The girls were fantastic. So.
yeah. You know, it's interesting. Now, I only know the sport at the upper levels, but you know, I covered the World Championships in the early '90s, and the caliber of play was weak at that point. But you know, then by the time I had gotten to the 2018 Olympics, I just couldn't believe it as I replayed in my mind with those words how far that women's hockey has come. Like the skill level is very impressive.
Yeah,
very impressive.
Like this team we played against, that's one thing I think they probably did better than us was being able to put the puck in the net. Like we got a ton of opportunities, but we weren't picking the corners and making plays. They had some really talented players on their team too. So and we do as well. But yeah, it's a good game. It was fun to be part of. But and again, the girls, I'm so impressed with them. But a lot of them are pretty emotional last night, especially the seniors, who that was their last game too. So.
Yeah, I saw your former defensive partner Don Waddell last night at the Carolina Detroit game. He was in town. Talked a little bit about his team that's still winning percentage over 700. And still playing at a high level. Doesn't have much cap space, but he'll look around. I think he might try to get a defenseman, but he's not. He likes his team, so he's not going to trade anybody off of it. So he just wants to be able to add something, and he doesn't want to give up his first round pick. So if you're not willing to trade off your team and give up a first round pick, it's going to be hard to acquire a big time player.
Definitely. Who's speaking of that? Who's going to win GM of the year this year? Who are you picking? GM of the year. He's got to be in the running, right?
Yeah, I think he does. But there's some guys that have done. Who's done a really good job this year. David Poyle. I didn't even think he was going to make the playoffs, and look where he is. I think Bill Guerin's done a great job there.
That's a weird award, though, right? That's almost should be for the year before in some cases. Like, it isn't necessarily that year that you make all the moves that pay off. You may make a bunch.
No, you do them in the off season. Yeah, no doubt about it. Bill Zito's done a remarkable job.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
And it's hard to talk about this year without saying what he did in the ramp up to get to this year. Like the moves started happening. 2 years before.
And Breezeball in Tampa is the same way. I mean, to keep that team together with the cap issues that they've had and still be one of those contending teams, he's done a good job too. Yeah. Right.
Oh, he's done. Yeah, there's a lot of guys have done a good job. I'll tell you a guy that's done a good job, and everybody wondered what kind of GM he would be, is Adams in Buffalo.
Yeah.
I think he's done a decent job, including picking the right coach in Don Granato, who I think has really made an impact. And I think they've sort of got that turned around. I see Darlene playing at a higher level. I see Thompson emerging under Donnie Granato.
And I doubted you on that one too. I did not think you're right on that.
Yeah. And they're going to get Owen Power, and I think Jack Quinn, the young player, is terrific. I think he's going to be an impact player. They've gotten Don has gotten more out of Skinner. He's got him turned around a little bit, and I'm glad of that, because Buffalo fans deserve more than they've gotten out of that organization.
And big news out of the kitchen: Costco had a keto brownie mix that I bought the other day. Couldn't resist it, so I made some keto brownies last night. Very tasty.
Wow. I didn't. I wouldn't take you for a brownie guy.
I do like brownies, and when I saw that it was keto. Now it's not perfect. I mean, the fat content's a little higher than you like to see, but it is keto. So I used eggs instead of butter. We used oil. So it's
sounds good. Well, anyway, we're running out of time. We appreciate you joining us as always. We'll be back next week. If you want to read me, I'm at hockeybuzz.com and DetroitHockeyNow.com.
And if you want to listen to the radio version of this show, you can go to radio.co at 365 Sports. Again, that's radio.co at 365 Sports. We'll see everybody next week.